Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. Today I'm here with the Beastmen. Once again, we are going to be taking on the Empire, so let's get to the builds. I've gone with my typical double bull here. Got Malagor leading the way with two GOREBULLs, got a bunch of Razorgore herds and Ungor Spearman herd. Of course, Butchers of Kalkengard and the Regiment of Renowned Cygor. I have Morslib. We've also got two Centaurs with throwing axes. As for my opponent's Empire army, definitely busting out the flagellants today. Must be on some kind of pilgrimage. We've got 5 flagellants up front, a couple handgunners, one of which is the Silver Bullets, Amber Wizard on the ground. We've got some spearmen in the back, Reichsguard, Pistoliers, and Outriders with grenade launchers. And General of the Empire leading the way. You don't see them too often, but a reasonably decent pick for the cost. And yeah, you can see here I sort of moved my infantry up, then decided, you know what, let's try and generate a little bit more value from that Cygor before we start getting mowed down by flagellants. So we're going to keep throwing rocks for the time being. Centaur's just kind of maneuvering around the side here, being annoying in general. And yeah, the key is, with this build, just to talk about Malagor's magic selection a little bit, Viletide, Lore of Wild in general, I think is pretty underappreciated. Viletide especially, you guys will see in just a minute here, is really, really good against low armor targets. I'm going to be able to use that to very good effect against those flagellants. Do get a little bit out of position here, though, with these GOREBULLs. They're going to start to take a lot of Overwatch fire from those handgunners. Meanwhile, over here, I get countercharged by the Reichsguard. My intention was to charge the Reichsguard with the pigs, but instead I kind of got countercharged here because the flagellants were in the way. It wasn't the best situation. One of them does get enraged, but the other two I'm going to pull away to try and get a more favorable situation. Likewise, the GOREBULLs also getting pulled back there, not wanting to face the gunfire. And also we need to protect Malagor in case the general decides to try and come goon him. Totally left out the Royal Altar of Gryphites, but they're going to get into the Clash of Champions here. This is really the duel of the fates with the Butchers of Kalkengard up against the Royal Altar of Gryphites. Altar of Gryphites going to get the Warp Gaze here, and also we're going to throw the Mantle of Garok on the Butchers of Kalkengard, up to 87 melee attack, 154 weapon strength apiece. They're just going to absolutely do a ton of damage to these Royal Altar of Gryphites, and you can see once they go in there, start doing some attacks, how much that health just gets absolutely chunked down. And meanwhile, on the front line, of course, Ungor Spears getting destroyed by flagellants. No surprises there. The Empire Missile Cav able to provide some pretty good Overwatch fire as well, but at the same time the pigs are coming back for a nice little re-engagement here and have been able to do some pretty good damage to the Reichsguard also. So, you know, give and take so far. It's pretty even in terms of the balance of power, but taking down the Royal Altar of Gryphites for basically no cost is pretty good here. I've lost 2 of the models on the Butchers of Kalkengard, but yeah, you just saw the Viletide go off there. I've been also dropping that as much as I can on any flagellant groups or just clumps of light infantry in general that pop up. But yeah, over here, this is a little bit of a problem. I've got a lot of breaking units that are potentially going to get chased off here, but thankfully for me, these pigs come back and immediately enrage into those Outriders. Might be able to bail out some of my routing units there. Also over on the side here, we do have these Centaurs with great weapons, or sorry, throwing axes, still kind of running around and being annoying. But over here, this is potentially a big mistake. The General of the Empire drops down to try and take out the Butchers himself, and while with support, this is generally a good idea. I'm going to be able to then get him in place here, come over with both the GOREBULLs, and of course one of them does have the Blood Greed buff, so that will go on the Butchers as well. And now he starts to take a ton of damage, so that is potentially a game-breaking scenario right there. You can see that does start to tip the balance power in my favor a little bit after that initial break. These Razorgore herd do get charged again by the Reichsguard. Not the best, but we do have some rallying units here that are going to then be able to come in and countercharge. The Spears with the Razorgore herd together should be able to take down those Reichsguard. My opponent's going to go ahead and summon up a Manticore here. And you can see the General of the Empire was literally just about to escape when I caught him with that Warp Gaze. Now the GOREBULLs and the Butchers can move in for the killing blow, and this is going to be the end of the General of the Empire here. He's just going to get straight up destroyed by these angry cows. A really nice Viletide just blew up that big blob of spears as well, and you can see that puts a significant dent in the balance of power. Obviously, flagellants being unbreakable aren't really going to care too much, but those spearmen are definitely shaken. The rest of these units in the back line, you can see the Altar of Gryphites tried to come back and bail out the the gunners, which I'd finally been able to get to with my Centaurs of throwing axes. I've been trying to get in the back line pretty much the whole game with them, and finally was able to do so. You can see the Amber Wizard actually just did a bunch of damage to himself with a miscast, and then immediately gets terrified away by the butchers there. So yeah, losing that extra leadership character as well. Pretty rough. Malagor's just been kind of fighting Flagellants the whole time. Honestly, Malagor's probably more than happy to fight Flagellants as long as he doesn't get like too caught up in a blob. Also, it kind of forces a blob for the rocks to be thrown into. He can, you know, use his magic to blow them up as well. And yeah, he's got 66 kills so far, and climbing, of course. That Vile Tide has been really, really effective at taking down those Flagellants, and you can see, even though, you know, they definitely match up much better than the Ungor Spearman Herd, the Ungor Spearman Herd are still hanging around, and the Flagellants have taken quite a bit of damage also just from the sort of combined approach. But yeah, over here, the last of the Royal Altar of Gryphites, or sorry, the Manticore are going to get taken down, and the Jade Wizard, or sorry, Amber Wizard shatters. With only Flagellants left, my opponent admits defeat there, and that's going to be game. So yeah, I've been having a ton of success with this double GOREBULL Malagor build, and you know, Morgur, sure, yeah, whatever. But honestly, the double bull with Malagor is a really, really good caster. He's pretty low-key in that you can kind of hide him, or, you know, your opponent may not necessarily dedicate a ton of resources to trying to go after him. Also, with this build, I have sort of safety net tools that if somebody really is trying to goon him super hard, then I can potentially, you know, stop a melee goon with the Eye of Morslib, you know, Warp Gaze, and the Minotaurs and so on. Missile goons would be a little bit more of a problem. Something like a Lithnar shooting at him, I wouldn't have a lot of recourse for. But, you know, it could potentially work out pretty well. For this particular battle, yeah, 165 kills on the Eye of Morslib there, 75 on Malagor himself at the end of the day, and of course the Butchers of Kalkengard just 1v1ing the Royal Altar of Gryphites with that magic support there, tilting that to be a very one-sided engagement, and definitely paid off well for me. And then of course the GOREBULLs and the Butchers finishing off. The General was also very key. Let's go ahead and jump into one more game here, where I use a similar build. This time we're going up against Averlorn. And yeah, you can see this time we've changed it up a little bit. Switched out one Centaur throwing axe for some more hounds, and we've also got yeah, four Razorgore herds with some chevrons this time. So we'll see how this goes. Pretty much the same idea here, more or less. Just use the Cygor to disrupt and then kind of advances if need be. But here my opponent's got some Reaver Archers. I'm perfectly fine to take this skirmish fight for a little while and throw some rocks at them. It's going to be pretty good damage, and they can potentially come up and do some good damage to like my Ungor Spearman Herd, but really, I mean, they're pretty cheap, so I'm not overly worried about it. And the Eye of Morslib can just pound out units, you know, regardless, but they should definitely be focusing on him right now. And in this matchup, in most matchups as the Beastmen, if you're fighting against the Beastmen, that is, you've always got a plan for how am I going to deal with the Eye of Morslib if it's on the field, because it will just absolutely pound everything. I mean, this is probably the best, one of the best artillery units in the game. The fact that it has this snare ability here, very accurate, super heavy damage, big terror-causing monster. I mean, they are relatively slow. They're not the most survivable in the world. 50 armor is okay. It's not amazing, but 25 melee defense is also pretty poor. They do have quite a bit of HP, though, and obviously, again, the Regiment of Renown being very, very accurate and having a better refire rate can consistently get devastating hits, and that hit there wasn't too devastating, but eventually I'm going to get a little bit tired of waiting, and you can see I'm starting to move up. If my opponent's going to let me take this high ground position and then fight downhill, that's going to be pretty advantageous to me, so I'm going to start moving over in that direction. For those of you guys who are newer to Total War games, fighting downhill gives you a significant advantage. Likewise, fighting uphill gives you a significant disadvantage. I have some testing videos in the early days of my channel that show that pretty clearly, but yeah. In this situation, you would always want to try and deploy on the highest ground possible in your deployment zone, and, you know, take the high ground, as they say, and try and fight downhill if you can. But you can see here the Elves sort of redeploying to face me, and we're going to fast forward a little bit, whoops, not that, through this mid game here, or I guess early game, as I sort of move up my little concave of Ungors. And we're going to get the pigs moved over as well. You can see the Eye of Morslip starting to target the Phoenix Guard. I've used up quite a bit of my ammunition already, and haven't really got that much value at the end of the day, so maybe shooting those Reavers wasn't the best. But yeah, we're going to start to generate really nice value against the Phoenix Guard. And the Phoenix Guard are obviously a danger. I mean, I have a pretty large focused army with a lot of Razorgore herds and other things, so a nice Vile Tide in the back there. You can see did quite a bit of damage to those archers. But the Cygor rocks are really the name of the game here at this point. You can see it's already tilting the balance power pretty significantly in my favor, just having those rocks being dropped there. So yeah, Ungor herd going to rush in. Under the banner of Averlorn, we do have a tree man here. He'll be able to get some good work done, but at the same time, you can see how I kind of use the Ungors to take out the bracing bonus and then rear charge these Phoenix Guard with the pigs, so then they take a bunch of damage. Or at least the pigs are able to do more damage, certainly. Yeah, Phoenix Guard will match up well, obviously, but there's just not enough units to protect. I'm able to get into some of these squishy backline units here, and yeah, it's just not a lot the High Elves can do. The Tree Man does terrify away some of my Ungors. Unfortunately, not the best, but at the end of the day, it's okay. Likewise, these archers for the High Elves getting terrified away. Alariel trying to drop a Star of Averlorn to heal up these Phoenix Guard as they fight the Butchers of Kalkengard, but the Butchers themselves also have healing, of course. And yeah, you can see the pigs rushing through to the second line. And honestly, you know, I rated the Beastmen pretty low in my tier list. Even as I was editing that tier list, I was thinking, you know, they probably aren't honestly this low. I think the Beastmen are actually pretty decent. Razorgore Herd are one of the units on the roster that I think are pretty underrated. Well, not necessarily underrated by some people. Certainly you'll see tournament players use them quite often. But I'll talk through why they're so good in just a minute here. But yeah, you can see my opponent admits defeat there, just losing on all fronts. I was able to catch out Alariel with the Bulls, and that was going to be it. So, mostly same story there. I have Morsley pounding it out. Malagor didn't rack up quite so many kills there, but the pigs definitely did some heavy lifting. So let's go ahead and take a look at what makes the pigs so good. If we go ahead and go over to the Beastmen here, and honestly I think they might be a little bit too good for the price. They might need to be nerfed just slightly, or maybe just have their cost increased to like 600, 650 I think would be pretty good. But for 550, what do you get? Okay, so on paper it doesn't look that great, right? 45 armor is not the worst, but it's not great. It's only 24 melee attack, 16 melee defense is really poor. I mean, obviously they've got 70 speed, they're pretty quick, heavy cavalry speed, but relatively poor leadership as well. But this is where it gets good. 52 weapon strength, with 36 of it being armor piercing, is a lot of weapon strength. Especially considering that they have 24 unit models. 46 is also a pretty decent charge bonus. It's not amazing, but that's certainly considerable. So they can do quite a bit of damage, especially on the initial impact. Speaking of impact, that is a main component of them as well, is they have very heavy mass. They have much heavier mass than any cavalry. They're comparable, I mean, they have heavier mass probably even than a lot of monstrous infantry as well. So what that means is, and I don't know exactly how, I've talked about this before, I don't know exactly how the impact damage calculations work. I want to say that mass differential is a part of that, but the Razorgore herds certainly do a lot of impact damage on the charge, and that mass also means that they can pin units in very easily. You know, even very heavy mass units like Hippogriff Knights, you can pin them in with Razorgore herds, and they'll do pretty consistent damage as long as they're getting hits, because of that high 52 weapon strength, and again 24 unit models gives them a pretty wide footprint. So yeah, I mean, on paper, just looking at the stats, you might not necessarily think that they are overpowered, but they do cause fear, and only 550 points. Honestly, I think these guys at 600 would be perfect, even 650. 650 might be a little bit too much, maybe 625, but I think at 550 points, they're just a little bit too cheap for what you get out of them. I don't know, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Those of you guys who play Beastmen regularly or play against Beastmen regularly, are Razorgore herds a little bit too strong right now, or do you think that they're pretty good? I mean, it does help compensate for the fact that most Minotaurs are absolute crap, right? Like, pretty much all the monsters past here, except for, you know, Butchers of Kalkengard you would take, obviously. Sometimes you might take Minotaurs with shields. There are a few situations where you might take the Chaos spawn for the Beastmen as well. They do have poison and really decent weapon strength, but, I mean, for 550, 24 unit models with 52 weapon strength, Rizagor Herd are a really, really nice monster option. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. If you want to help support me in a more personal way, become a channel member or a patron on Patreon. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.